Well, good afternoon. If it's Tuesday afternoon, it's Tuesday's Tips with Michael live here from the StreamYard studio from my basement office, broadcasting all over the place. We're a little later today. We had a little Wiley thing. One of our partners had a little thing today, so we were just a little bit late today. Got some new things happening. We'll share those with you. If you follow us on social media, we got some new things happening, new product announcements and whatnot. So stay tuned. You'll get some of that soon. But we're continuing our leadership journey as we started this summer. Now going on into this fall, we're starting our leadership journey. So thank you for coming on the ride with us. If you're watching this post session, send us a shout out. I'm also looking for questions. So a couple of folks have already chimed in with questions around leadership, questions around training, questions around HR. Happy to answer your questions here live in the studio. So feel free to chime in with a question. Send me a message wherever you're seeing this. Mike, I'd like you to cover this at one of your sessions. I'm happy to do that. But now we're going back to our work of leaders. We're doing leadership. And if you remember last week, we're focused on momentum, which is part of the execution strategy in the crafting a vision, building alignment, and championing execution, which we teach in the Work of Leaders program. So we're in the first step of that execution, which is momentum. Last week, we talked about being driven. Very, very important to be driven. Keep the team moving forward, keep the organization moving forward, keep the division moving forward, being driven. Today, we're going to talk about initiating. Got to keep that momentum going. Got to give that initiation. You got to get team members to rally around a particular goal or a particular vision, and you need to initiate some of this. You need to be the oomph, if you will, to initiate this action. So as always, we're going to give you a couple tips. Going to give you a couple tips today because it is Tuesday's tips, and we'll set the stage for what happens next. So a couple of reminders about the whole momentum thing, why momentum is important, right? We have to ensure that opportunities are seized before it's too late. That's why you need to initiate action. Get superior results by avoiding stagnation or by avoiding being kind of, stuck in the rut, in the mud, in the quicksand, however you want to call it. I work with a lot of leaders. Their teams are kind of stuck in the mud. I ask them, what have you initiated? What have you tried new? What have you tried to do to get them out of the mud, if you will? And you need to create a sense of urgency, right? You need to create the sense of urgency. A leader creates a sense of urgency within the folks they lead or within the team. You need to set the stage for that urgency. Not that you want to be rushed, but you want to set a sense of urgency. I work with a lot of leaders that, as we talked earlier last week, they're a bit more laid back. They're a bit more non-confrontational. They really don't want to push people. It's not really their mantra. But if you want to create momentum, you have to initiate some action as a leader. You need to initiate some action as a leader. So you want to initiate new directions, right? You want to initiate new ideas. You want to initiate new accomplishments. And we'll talk more about feedback in a couple of weeks about why it's important to give people feedback when you initiate and they follow that lead, right? Keep a list of those needs close by. You can start with a small group. As we talked about this whole leadership journey, a lot of folks are intimidated by trying to do this in a larger group. So start with a small group, even start with one person, initiate action to one person, and then a couple of people. And that initiation, if you will continue forward to the larger group. They see other people initiating action. Be proactive. Be that entrepreneur in your organization, on your team. Set the stage. When a leader shows initiative, the group is more likely to grow and extend its reach rather than simply maintain the status quo. And it's very important to get out of the status quo. Change happens all the time. Some change is great. Some change may need to be slowed down a little bit. But if you want your team or your group or your organization to go through and lead change, you need to initiate some of that action. So this is part of momentum, which is the first step in the execution phase of the work of leaders. So it's being driven. We talked about that last week, and now it's initiating, getting things started. Next week, the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about structure, right? We've talked about some structure earlier on, but this is where we start to really initiate action and get that momentum going. Now we need to look at structure. We're going to be looking at planning. Do you have a plan? Some leaders have a plan. That's great. Some leaders not so much. So we're going to talk about the plan part and the execution, and we're going to talk about analyzing that execution as you go forward. So next 2 weeks are going to be planning and analyzing in depth. Again, some of you are probably really strong in these areas. Some of you may need some help in these areas. So come back and listen next Tuesday for Tuesday's Tips with Michael live, wherever you are seeing this. Make it a great day. Be a great leader. Initiate action on your team, and you will see results. We'll see you next week here in the StreamYard studio. Make it a great week.